Hi everybody, I'm George, and today Fuji have announced 4 brand new products, which I'm going to tell you all about in this video. Now first off, I'm going to start with the Fuji X-T50, which is basically the X-T5 but rehashed. So there's going to be a lot of similarities with this camera to the Fuji X-T5, but it's in a slightly smaller form factor. It has the same processor and sensor as the X-T5, so you're going to see quite a lot of the same performance with the X-T50 as with the X-T5. That is a 40 megapixel sensor, so there's plenty of resolution to play with there. And actually, this is the first X-T-XX, so X-T and then 2-digit camera that has IBIS or inbuilt image stabilization built into the camera, which goes up to 7 stops. This is wonderful because it means that if you're shooting video or stills, it just allows you a lot more flexibility in terms of being able to shoot with a lower shutter speed or having those stable video shots. In terms of AF, the X-T50 is identical to the X-T5 once again, which is just wonderful because you know how good the autofocus is on the X-T5 if you've ever shot with one. That's actually one of the reasons that the camera is so popular, is because it works so well at just being able to capture shots really quickly and on the fly, and I found the exact same experience when using the X-T50 today. One of my favorite things about the X-T50 is the film simulation dial. As you know, film simulations and the looks that you can get straight out of Fuji cameras are actually one of their biggest selling points. It's one of the reasons that they're so popular. And the fact that you can actually change the simulation that you want without having to go into menus is really cool, because it means that actually you can so visibly just click the dial. It's really satisfying to click, and then you'll change that film simulation so you can see it immediately. It's a lot quicker than having to go through any menu systems to then sort of see what you're going to look like. So if you want to give your image a certain look, you can now do so much faster, or you can actually just really easily keep clicking it and shooting the same image in many different film simulations, and then you can decide which one you want later. If you want to shoot any continuous images with this camera, then you can go up to 8 frames a second on the mechanical shutter and up to 20 frames a second when using the electronic shutter. This is perfectly catered to taking street photos or taking wildlife photos, like exactly what we're doing today in this lovely safari park. Whilst this is predominantly a stills first camera, they haven't slept on the amazing video specs that they've popped into this, and that's most notably that you can shoot up to 6.2K up to 30 frames a second, you can shoot 4K up to 60 frames a second, and you can shoot full HD up to 240 frames a second. So there's a really nice amount of frame rates and resolutions for you to pick from when you're recording video. You can record all of these in 10-bit 422, so you can retain all of that color detail there, which is really good for post-production, especially combined with the fact that you can also shoot all of these in f/log2, which is Fuji's log format, which means that then you get even more control when you're color grading. This means that you can push and pull your images to your delight. But if that's still not enough for you, then if you plug in an external recorder, then you can get even more video options, like being able to shoot in Blackmagic RAW or ProRes. Now, this is amazing because actually it means that once you've plugged in that external monitor, you get a whole host of really professional video codec options. The fact that you can shoot in B-RAW for me is a huge plus, because Blackmagic RAW allows you to then in post change the ISO and white balance of what you've shot. So if you've made a mistake or you need to make some corrections, you can do so with ease. The keen eyed viewers may have actually noticed though that I have a brand new lens on top of this brand new body, and that is Fuji's new kit lens, the 16-50 f2.8 to 4.8. Now this replaces Fuji's old kit lens, which they've actually had for a long time, which is the 18-55. And it has a few new features which are really nicely catered to their new camera systems. Most notably, it has much better performance when used with higher megapixel sensors. That means that now that they have lots of 40 megapixel cameras, you're going to see a lot better resolving power in this lens, which is just wonderful. The main thing that I've actually taken away from this lens though, and one of the best ease of use things about it, is the fact that it has an internal zoom. So it doesn't extend out like the old one used to. This is just so useful when using it, just because your camera format always stays the same size, and it actually means that if any video users wanted to pop it on a gimbal, you're not going to encounter extra issues in terms of balance. As you'd expect with kit lenses, it's really small, which is so useful because I think that's one of the most important things for a kit lens to be, is just usable. It should be practical, it should be small, and it should also be lightweight. It comes in at 240 grams, so you can see it's absolutely tiny. It weighs next to nothing, which is so useful for just your everyday shooting. But there's still two products which I'm yet to tell you about, which I have in my hand right here. I'll tell you about the body first, which is the Fujifilm GFX 100S2, which boasts a 102 megapixel sensor and the latest in their medium format line of cameras. The 102 megapixel sensor is actually a brand new sensor. It's not the same as the GFX 102, which came out last year, even though it's the same megapixel. The sensor has been updated. This camera has up to 8 stops of IBIS, which is super useful, especially because I've been using it exclusively today with their new lens, which I'll tell you about in a bit, but it is a 500mm, so you can imagine I've really been utilizing that IBIS today, or I would have been getting some very dodgy shots or having to run my camera at a really high shutter speed. When it comes to continuous shooting, you get up to 7 frames a second, and that actually does include the use of autofocus. I think this is so cool because being able to capture those sort of in-between moments in the split of a second on an 102 megapixel sensor with autofocus is just amazing. Earlier on today, there was a moment actually where a rhino started to charge towards me, and I was able to utilize that continuous shooting and the autofocus to get some really cool shots of it. The fact that I was able to capture that kind of moment on a medium format camera, I think is really special. You can utilize those exact same 20 film simulation modes that I mentioned earlier that the X-T50 has, which is really cool as well if you want that nice look straight out of camera. When it comes to video, you've got 4K up to 30 frames a second and 1080p up to 60 frames a second, and you can shoot that in f-log 2, so if you want to do some color grading, that's perfect. It also pairs perfectly with the fact that you can shoot in 10-bit 422, so you get all that detail there. You can push and pull your video images, and you're not going to see much color breakage. If you need a little bit more though, you can actually plug in your external recorder, much like the X-T50, and get access to ProRes and Blackmagic RAW, which just gives you so much control when it comes to post-production. You can also shoot a 400 megapixel image using the pixel shift technology. So if you were there sitting there thinking, oh, I might want a little bit more than 100 megapixels. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what you're shooting, but you can do it. And that is amazing. It allows you so much flexibility to crop or blow your image up onto pretty much any surface as large as you like. But let me move on to this new lens that I'm also holding, which is the GF 500mm f5.6. Now, 500mm is an absolutely incredible focal length. It's going to give you so much detail, and today, as I've been photographing animals on this safari park, it has come in so handy. I've actually pretty much been glued to this setup all day because the combination of 102 megapixels and a 500mm lens is just a beautiful one to shoot with. This is also compatible with the 1.4 times teleconverter. So if 500mm wasn't quite enough for you, you get that extra reach, which is perfect. It means that you can really hone in on your subjects. The lens is rear weighted too, which is perfect for handheld shooting. Now, I've been shooting with it handheld the entire day, and it actually sits in the hand really nicely. But that's also partly because it actually doesn't weigh very much for a 500mm. It's 1375 grams, so it's not too heavy. You know, a lens of this magnitude, sometimes they're really beefy, really heavy, but this one isn't, which is just wonderful. One of the other reasons it's so nice to shoot with handheld is that it has optical image stabilization, so you're able to get really clean shots. I've actually recorded a few video shots handheld on a 500mm lens today, which, to be honest, is just a ridiculous thing to do. But as you can see, the video is really clean and it's really stable, and that's not to do with my stable hands. That is all to do with the optical image stabilization in the lens, and that combined with the IBIS in the body. It has a linear motor for silent shooting, which is wonderful, and the lens is weather resistant, which has worked out perfectly today because it's pretty soggy out there. It also isn't quite as large as it probably looks in this piece of camera right now, and that's because of this huge lens hood that's on the top. But once I take off the lens hood, you can see, I mean, obviously it's a big lens. It's a 500mm, but it's not actually that big. It's quite nice to use. I can actually really comfortably hold it handheld, or I've been having it around my neck all day while I've been using the X-T50, and it's been no issue. The lens has 21 elements in 14 groups, and that is 5 ED and 2 super ED elements, so there's plenty to work with to make sure that you're getting really crisp images. It has an aperture ring on the lens, which is really useful. I've been using that all day today, and I love using aperture rings. I think it's so much nicer. I like having that control on the lens, especially with a lens like this, because you're typically going to hold it by the lens, not the camera body, so then it's really nice that you can then just quite easily move your thumb up and change the aperture really speedily. I've had a wonderful time testing out these cameras and lenses today. I would say, unfortunately, it's been a little bit short and sweet because we haven't actually had much time with these products. I've only had them for 3 or 4 hours, and trying to test 2 cameras and 2 lenses in 3 or 4 hours, unfortunately, I'm never going to be able to use them to the detail that I'd want to. I haven't been able to test out every single function on them, but what I've used, I've really enjoyed. I think my favorite has actually been this 500mm. It's so nice to use a lens with that kind of reach, and it's been perfect for shooting the animals today. Unfortunately, this is the end of my time with these amazing products, as I need to go return them to the Fujifilm staff. But before I signed off, I just wanted to give anybody the opportunity to ask any questions to me, or if there's any clarification anybody would like over the specifications of these products, then please pop a comment down below, and myself or a member of the Wax Photo video team will get back to you as soon as possible. But otherwise, have a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next video.